Okay. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Elu Metzia Shalai. This parak, of course, speaks about the halacha of if you find something of somebody's, you have to return it. And it's all based on the pasuk that says, "Lasucha l'salim." If you find something of your friend, "Lasucha l'salim," hashev teshivim, you must return them. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Elu Metzia Shalai. These things, if you find them, you're allowed to keep. But elu chayav lahachris. And these are the ones that you have to call out and try to find its rightful owner to return it to them. Elu Metzia Shalai. What metzias do you get to keep? Matzah pairs mefuzarin. If you found spread out pairs that indicate that its owner were miyayish, or mois mefuzaris. Now this already is a big mouthful that we said so far. So let's peek into Rashi. Elu metzias matzah pairs mefuzarin. So right away Rashi says, why is it that elu metzias shaloi? Because the bailim were miyayish from them. And here Rashi says a big chiddush, the hefker. Since the bailim were miyayish, they now become hefker. So let's look back at this Mishnah. The wording, the expression of the Mishnah is not really parallel. Which is say elu metzia shaloi, ve'elu she'eina shaloi, or elu chayav lachris, ve'elu eina chayav lachris. So there's two things over here. And there's really two shilohs over here. A is, are you allowed to keep it? And B is, even if you're not allowed to keep it, are you mechuyev to call it out? Are you mechuyev to find its rightful owner? So it seems like the two are linked to each other. That anything that you're not mechuyev to call out, automatically you're allowed to keep it. The shiloh also is, what is the chiyuv lahachris? If you have to call something else, what is the proper advertisement or publicizing in a metzia that you find? So Rav Moshe Feinstein says, if you find a metzia, you don't have to spend money and take out a newspaper ad. So Rav Moshe says, what you should do is you should hang up a sign in shul that you found something, and he says in his area where everybody lives in apartment buildings, the best place to put a sign is right in front of the elevator, because when people are waiting for the elevator, they have a chance to read signs. So just posting signs in the neighborhood would be considered yoytze the chiv of chayav lachas. And that's one of the chedushim that the achroim are medayik from the Mishnah. That if you're not chayav lachas, you're allowed to keep it. In other words, what would happen if you found something that you were not chayav lachas? Why? Because it didn't have a siman. And then someone came with edim that says that item was his. The halacha is you don't have to give it to him, because since there was no chiv lahachris, you're allowed to keep it. What's the mechanics of how this works? That's what Rashi says. Since the bailam miyayish, kedamar begamor v'hefkain. So Rashi seems to say that yush is hefker, or maybe it means that yush leads to hefker. So what is yush? Yush just means you say vailon l'chasar and kiss. I lost it, farfalon. You give up on it, and giving up on it makes it hefker. Most Rishonim hold that's not the case. And let's take a little look over here. We learned in Bava Kama of Kufta Zayin. Most of us will remember it because it was a weird story about it was Rav Kahana who was walking around in a caravan, and a lion was accompanying them on the way. I guess that was the norm in those days by Amoraim, that lions accompanied them in order to protect them from any problems. I think it was Kufta Zayin in Bava Kama. It was over here. Let's see if you could find the story over here. So Zok the Heilige Gemara on Daf Kufta Zayin. Good morning. It says as follows. Here's the story. The stories of Safra, not Rakan. Kihadr of Safra have a ka'azul b'shayirasa. he was going in a caravan. Lavinu hahu ari, and they were being accompanied. The caravan was being escorted by a lion to protect them. Kol laila kashad lechamer dechad minay. Every night they had to give the lion to eat. So one of the members of the caravan would sacrifice their chamor so that the lion would have what to eat. The koachel. Kimata zimnid Rab Safra, when it was Rab Safra's turn to sacrifice his chamor, shada lechamer, he sent the chamor to be eaten by the lion. And the lion did not eat Rab Safra's chamor. So Kadim Rav Safra v'zachabi. He ran quickly to be kind it back. Rashi says why? Kadim sheyachzik b'hen acher, before anybody else would have a chance to grab it. Sharei hefker hoya, because it was hefker, because he gave it already to the lion. So Amalei Rav Acham Edipti Ravina Lamalei Lemiskebe. Why did Rav Safra have to be kind it back? Nehi dechi afkere maskemun, he was mafkeret because he gave it to the lion. Adaited Ari after it. He wasn't.
Yeah, so what is it? So could I?
He wasn't mafkeret in Gansen. He was mafkeret just because he was going to let the lion eat it. But adaited the chula amalei afkeret. It wasn't a real hefker. Zok Gemara amalei Rab Safra l'Rafcha the Milsud al-Bahad. He just did it because if someone didn't know the halakha and would think that it's hefker, that person would try to grab it unlawfully. So just to make sure that nobody would get near it, Reb Safra ran to be kind it back. So you see clearly from this Gemara that the Yiyush did not take it out of the Rishus of Reb Safra. When someone sends an animal to a lion, he's miyayish on it, right? It's not likely to survive. Yet it did not take it out of the Rishus of Reb Safra. So you see clearly here that Yiyush is not like Hefker. Hefker takes something out of your Rishus. Yiyush does not take something out of Yerushos. So what does Yiyush do? So most of the Achronim explain, all Yiyush does is it suspends the Isser Gzela from your item. So now anybody who wants to come and take it may come and take it. But it still belongs to you. So in Reb Safra's case, yes, it still belonged to him, even though he was miyayish from it. The moment he's not in the situation of Yiyush, the moment he saw that the lion didn't eat his chamar, so now that suspension of the Isser Gzela is gone. And now it's fully his again. He doesn't have to be koined. If you're mafker something and you want to reclaim it, you have to make a new kinyan on it. If you're miyayish on something and you want to reclaim it, you do not have to make a new kinyan on it. So Yiyush basically just removes a barrier from other people to what you have. Hefker takes it completely out of your rishos. So because of that, there are those who struggle with Rashi, who seems to say that since he was miyayish, it becomes hefker, but could be since he was miyayish, therefore it can become hefker, but it's not mamish hefker. That's how people learn in Rashi. Why is that? Why there are the Bava miyayish? Since it doesn't have a clearly visible siman, iyushi miyayish, and once again Rashi repeats it v'havalu hefker. So two Rashis back to back. Rashi says that Yush leads to Hefker, V'zeu tam kulam, and that is the explanation for all the items in our Mishnah. So that's what we should probably use as a guideline, that Yush is just, it remains in your Rishos, but it allows somebody to take it, and Hefker takes it out of your Rishos completely. Bundles, and Rashi, they're bundles of stalks of wheat or some other grain. Small stalks. By Yosef's dream, with the community of Yishalmi, there are bundles. Okay, there's nothing identifying, nothing unique about it, and therefore someone's going to be miyayish. Which is a rabbim, everybody steps on it. Even if it did have a siman, by now it would have been destroyed because people are walking by it. Just a round cake of pressed figs, nothing unique or identifying about it. Kikr shalnachtim, a bilka from the bakery, which many of the thousands of bilkas that I made, they all look identical. Macharayah says shaldogim, a string of fish. You know, when people go fishing, at the end of the day, they come with a string full of fish. I come with a string at the end of the day. But some people, when they go fishing, they actually walk out with a string full of fish. I've never seen that in real life, but I guess that's the idea. Or ununique standard pieces of meat cut in a normal fashion where there's nothing special about them. Or gizei tzemer, shorn wool that are not processed in any specific way that could be a siman. Halakuchen mimidinasa. Rashi says, it looks like shorn wool with no unique identifying factors. If it came from Beis Omen, each Omen might have a different way of processing it, then there might be some type of identifying feature. Which Rashi says are rishta, I think it means a piece of flax. But does the article say precisely what it is? Anitze pishton? It's a piece of raw flax. What's that? Middle of flax. Ulashayni shalagaman.
It's your first flax that's been beaten and carded, ready for spinning.
Okay. The lashon shalagaman, which is chemer sarah kumashach kamin lashon, it was combed into the shape of a tongue. Since there's no special, unique identifying features, we say the bialim are for sure miyayish. Divrei Meir, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, kol sheyesh bo shinoi chayav lachus. If there's something unique about it, you have to announce it. Gemara is going to explain what Rabbi Yehuda's point is, and in which way, if he differs with the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir, ketzad matzah eagle uvasoyf cheres. What if you want the gula shel dvelo? It was a pressed cake of pressed figs, but inside it there was a cheres, or kikar uvasoyf chemois. Or if you find a bilka and there was some cash inside the bilka. Rav Shimon ben Elazar Aimer, kol kli ampuria, which the Gemara is going to explain what it is, ain't chayav lachos, you would not have to call those out. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Motza peres mefuzarin. Peres mefuzarin, we say, you don't have to call out. The kama, which means how spread out do they have to be considered something that somebody would be miyayisha. Rabbi Yitzchak, kav barba. If you have a kav of grain that's spread out into arba amos, and we're going to assume 4 amos means 4 by 4, which is 16 square amos, right? It could be, is it 2? I don't think it's 2 by 2, which is 4 square amos. I think it's 4 by 4, which is 16. What does Rashi say? Kav mufuzah ba arba amos. I'm going to assume it's 4 by 4. It'll become a little bit relevant soon. Hey Chadami, what exactly happened over here? If you could tell that somebody dropped it and didn't notice, so therefore afilu tuvanami, even if it's more than a kav, so it's much more concentrated in that same area. The guy dropped it. He probably will be mirayish because he dropped it by mistake. He doesn't even know if he dropped it. Doesn't know that he dropped it. So how is he going to find it? But if you could see that someone put it there neatly, the way it was piled up, it wasn't just scattered, that means someone placed it there. If someone placed it there, he's coming to get it back. He's not miyayish. Afilu b'tzamachi nami loy. Even if it's less than a kav in Daled Amos, you still shouldn't be allowed to take it because that's something that somebody put there, and he obviously was not miyayish. So where would it be relevant? Where would it be relevant, b'chalal, the level of concentration in the space that it's in? If it looks dropped, he'll be miyayish regardless. If it looks placed, he won't be miyayish regardless. We're not speaking about an aveda. We're talking about someone who abandoned his grain in the threshing platform. So there was an area where they used to thresh. After they would thresh, they would gather the grain that they threshed, put it into baskets, and cart it away. But I guess, as maybe what happened was he filled up his pickup truck with grain, and he was full. So he was going to go unload it in his silo. The question, will he come back? Is it worth of him to come back to pick up the remaining grain that he hasn't picked up yet? So therefore, kav b'arba amos, if there's a kav that's spread out in 4 amos, the navish terchayu, it's a pain in the neck to start picking up from the ground little kernels spread out over a large area. Loy tarachidish, the owner's not coming back. He's not coming back to get it. Therefore, as he's leaving, he says, listen, for this little bit, I'm not coming back. I'm not stepping back. It's not worth it. It's hefker. But if it was cob that was spread out in less than arbamis, he says, yeah, I'm going to unload. I'm going to come back to pick up the rest of my product. He's going to be matriach to gather them, and therefore he's going to come back. He's going to come back with an empty pickup truck to pick it all up. The loy mafkaluni won't be mafkal. The Baltic. Zoktamar boy Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah wants to know: is it all about the concentration level, the ratio of tircha to product, or maybe there's other factors involved? Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah. Chatzi kav b'shtei amos mal. What if it was a half of a kav of total produce, but its concentration level was the same as a kav arbamis because it was only split out of 2 amas? Ma what's Allah? Kav arbamis time of mine. Why do we say that a kav arbamis a person is mafkir? It's a big tircha to start. It's literally like searching for that airplane, the MH77. What was the MH what? MH700 or something? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The Leisure, they're starting now a new search of it because they have new information. But it's a big tircha to go through and comb a whole large area. But if it's only spread out in a smaller area, even like it's not such a big tircha to cover that area. It won't be mafkir. Or maybe it's because a kav is not worth going back to retrieve. But the chatzi kav, it's even worse. Given the loy chashivi, it's even worth less than the kav mafkir. Now the problem here, think
about 4 hours.
But the question is someone going to schlep back to pick that stuff up? Or say, forget it, my time is better used doing something else. I guess it would. One thing I can tell you, they didn't have vacuum cleaners in those days. Otherwise, it goes zip, 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 and there wouldn't be a tirch anyway. Okay, so look, Tosh has a very simple kasha. If someone would do kav arbamis, he would for sure he'll also do chatzi kav v'shtei. It's the same thing. Chatzi kav v'shtei amas mau. Tamer fractoses. Halei kav v'arbamis havanami chatzi kav v'shtei amas. It's exactly the same. Umakam aboyle. What is the shaila? It's the identical ratio. So a guy who's going to come pick up a kav v'arbamis, meaning he's doing 2 sets of chatzi kav v'shtei amas. So why is there a shaila? V'yesh loimer, emphasizes the kivon the leka el chatzi kav, since there's only half a kav yilkoit kivon she'ein lo toyach ligmor. Take the bigger the search area, it's too overwhelming to come back for. So therefore, if it's just a small area, yes, it's the same ratio. Okay, 2 amas I can handle, but 4 amas, forget it. Forget the whole thing. That would be the psychology of it. So kivon the leka el chatzi kav yilkoit kivon she'ein lo toyach ligmor. Avo kav arbamis yesh lo toyach lilkei dakoil. Because of that, he's going to walk away from everything. So that's psychology.
I don't understand. Maybe he'll just come back for the chatzi kav in 2 amas.
Right. So what tells you it's a psychology. Since there's more there, and he's thinking, oh, what a big tircha, he's not going to come back at all. That's just the psychology of the person. He has a bigger job that's more overwhelming. Inami, here's what tells you this is a big eye opener. Kav ba'arba muraboyin, a kav in 4 square amas, have a chatzi kav b'shtei amas roichev va'arba amas roichev va'arba amas oirach. So what is he saying over here? What he's saying here is v'hakaboy chatzi kav b'beis amas al beis amas. The shaila of kav ba'arba amas is 4 by 4, which is 16 square amas. The shaila of chatzi kav b'shtei amas is not chatzi kav in 2 by 4. It's a chatzi kav in 2 by 2. So it's a much higher concentration. Right. So Tosfos is learning that it's a much higher concentration. It's less than half the space, right? Instead of it being an 8 square amas, which would be the same ratio, it's in 4 square amas. So is it a kav? The main halacha was a kav in 16 square amas, and how the shaila is a half a kav in 4 square amas. That's a much bigger tzad to say that he would want to do it.
This is part of a larger field, or
Yeah.
How does he know what size area he lost it in?
Because he was loading up his pickup truck with the grain that he threshed, and he was full. So the question is, will he come back for the remaining amount? So he looks and sees what's there. He sees how difficult, how much of a tircha would be for him to gather it, and he decides if he wants to come back or forget it. I'll leave that for Hefker, and I'll just deal with what I got into my pickup truck. And next year I'll buy a bigger one. I'll buy a bigger Ram.
You don't have to bend me down.
The rest is very understandable.
No, I just don't understand how he knows the exact size of the area that lost it, and how much was lost in what area. So I don't understand. He lost it. So
He
doesn't-
didn't have a tape measure there. I mean,
I
he's
don't know
not
where
really
he lost
losing.
it or when he
Now,
lost it.
now when the Gemara asks Bachmashma do that, doesn't mean
He didn't lose anything. He's
it's the workplace
he's
where
deciding to abandon it.
everybody is using, and is he going to abandon it or not?
Okay, so let's see the Gemara back. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah. This is always a question when you're on a job site and you have extra materials at the job site. Is it worth investing your labor in retrieving that, or is it better just to trash it? That's always a question. Because if you want to retrieve materials from the job site, that costs you money to retrieve. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, depending on the situation.
Also costs money. Too costs experience.
No, because you leave it there, but I've been the recyclers come here. Zak the Gemara. Okay, Zak the Gemara. So where are we up to? Kabayim b'shvoi namas. What about on the other end of the spectrum, where it's more space? Mahu kabar b'amas taimamai yishum denavish terchayu the kolshkin kabayim b'shvoi namas. If the search area is bigger, it's even more overwhelming. Even in the fish terchayu tfei mafkalu adilma mishum delech hashivi. Why do you not recover kabar b'amas? Because the kav isn't big enough of a quantity to extend an effort for. But the kabayim b'shmoinamas kiven the chashivi loy mafkalu. So now we were talking about in space whether it's difficult or not. Now we're going to look at difficulty based on the activity itself. Kav shum shomin v'arbamas. Shum shomin are sesame seeds, right? And they're a lot smaller and difficult to pick up. Again, they didn't have vacuums in those days. They're a lot more difficult to pick up than chitin or sa'irin, but they're also more valuable. The kav shum shomin v'arbamas. Mao. Kav v'arbamas taimamai mishum l'chashivi v'shum shomin kiven the chashivi l'mavkalu. They're much more expensive. A person will extend greater effort to retrieve them. Or maybe there's a limit to how much tircha someone wants to engage in. The kolshkin shumshumin, which are much more difficult to gather up, they keep in the navish terchayu tvei mafkalu. Or let's look at the other side of the spectrum. Kav tamri barbamas, a kav of dates which are easier to retrieve but not as expensive. Or kav rimoni barbamas, or a kav of pomegranates. Mao. Kav barbamas time mamshud lechashivi. Kav tamari barbamas. Kav rimoni barbamas. Nami kivin lechashivi. They're also not nearly as valuable. Therefore, mafkalu. Or dilma mishum to nefisha terchayu. Or maybe it's because by the wheat it's hard to gather them all up. But the kav tamari barbamas, the kav rimoni barbamas. They're bigger, they're easier to gather. Maybe loy mafkalu, my, and for the Gemara take. So what is halacha l'maisa? Halacha l'maisa. What if you find this? Are you allowed to take it? Not allowed to take it. What's halacha? So there are those who learn. Most of the Rishonim learn that you go safek l'raisa l'chumra, and therefore you are mechuyev to be machris them. You're mechuyev to be machris them to try to find the new owner. But the Rambam learns that the Teku tells us that you're allowed to keep it. Teku tells you that you're even allowed to keep it. Zok Gemara, Itmar. Oh, we have to stop here 1 second. There's a very, very important Rashi that talks about by Machnash to the Vedari why you would be able to keep it. So what does Rashi say? By Machnash to the Vedari, the Shas Asifas Granois, the Khan Doshan Balayim. Here's where the owner threshed it. The Nosu is a Iker they loaded up the bulk of the produce. The noishur elu, and these remain. So Rashi uses a loshon. Rashi uses a loshon over here of aveda midas. Where did Rashi say that? I don't see it here, Rashi. There was a loshon that was mentioned somewhere that says that since he left it there,
There's a feeling, Rashi, there's a feeling.
Rashi,
There's a feeling sheyesh l'das, shelo yichud das. Enough.
No, but I'm talking about where Rashi says if it's kavar mamas, where I wouldn't want to gather them up because it's not interesting to me, so it's considered an aveda midas. Because there's a whole shaila in the halacha of aveda midas. If someone is negligent, he doesn't lock up his animal and it gets lost. Are you mechuyev to bring that back to him? If someone doesn't have aveda midas, are you mechuyev to bring back to him? So pashas you're not mechuyev to, but there's actually a shaila if you're allowed to keep it as well. Most people learn in aveda midas, although you're not mechuyev to be matriach yourself to get it back because he himself doesn't care about it, but you're still not allowed to keep it. But those hold you are allowed to keep it. I'm sorry?
Doesn't care, doesn't take care.
He doesn't take care. You don't know what's in his heart. Itmar Zakt Gemara. So now we have our favorite sugya of Yiyu Shaloi Midas. Itmar Yiyu Shaloi Midas. Abaya Amar Lo Yav Yish, V'Rav Amar Hav Yish. So first we need to know what is the definition of Yiyu Shaloi Midas. Zakt Rashi Yiyu Shaloi Midas. Davar Shestamai Yiyush L'Cheshayeda Shenafal Mimenu. Something that when this person realizes that he lost it, he will for sure be miyayish right away. The problem is when you picked it up and you found it, adayin lo yodu abayim shenafam. The abayim didn't know about it. So Abai says lo haviyush, and Rava says haviyush. Let's see if we can get a better understanding of what they're saying and why they're saying. Zakamar kula amaloi pligi. If the item has a simon, kula amaloi pligi. Everybody agrees the loy haviyush because this is not yish loy midas. This is not yish at all. Even though later on we heard that someone was miyayish on something that he lost, even though the item had a simon, so after he was miyayish, yes, you're allowed to keep it. But in advance of his yish, surely lo yaviyish, when you found it, the owner had not yet been miyayish yet, and therefore be'isura hu the asal yadei. Now it doesn't literally mean there was an isur for him to take it. He's mechuyev to take it to help return it. It means it was in a matzav where he wasn't allowed to take it. And Rashi adds the davar she'nei asur liyishayishu. When he picked it up, it wasn't even something that in its future the bailam would be miyayish on. It's something that normally the bailam wouldn't be miyayish. The lechiyada the nafal minei, a normal person, if he lost something with a clearly identifiable feature, even if he finds out that he did lose it, loy miyayish, he would not have given up, because Meimar Amr, he would have said, Simna Isla Bigavei, I have a simon, you have no simna, I'll present my simon, Vishakil Nalei, and I'll take it. On the other side of the spectrum, Vizute Shal Yam Uvishluisa Shal Nahar. What if Rashi explains Zuta Shal Yam is sometimes the water line reaches to the end of the beach, and sometimes the water can recede. Rashi is up to 10 or 5 parsois. Rashi says it happens twice a day, so I'm assuming it's going to be the tide. So there's a lot of area that could be flooded with water and then shortly drained from its water. So if you left something there and it got sucked into the yam, there's no chance of you ever retrieving that. Or again, if it's left by the side of the river and the river swells and then it shrinks, it'll be swept up in the river. I always refer to that as if you lived in Rupshitz and you lived by the creek that was in Rupshitz and the river expanded and then sucked in, then your item got sucked up the Rupshitz Creek, right? So you're going to lose it forever, right? So Zok the Gemara, even though there is a simon on it, there's a pasuk that says you're allowed to keep it. Because it says, I should tell you that mimenu umatzasa. If something is lost from you, but anybody else sees it, it's on the ground, it's around, that's where there's halacha v'shavas aveda. But if it's lost, mikol b'nei adam, meaning it's got sucked up by the ocean, that's lost to everybody. There is no chiv of hashava. The Torah gives it to its finders. That's where you say finders, keepers, losers, weepers. So avagav deis beisimin rachmona sharya kadaminu l'meimer kamon, like the Gemara is going to talk about later. So where is this machlokes of Yush Midas? Kipligli b'davar she'ein b'simin, something that didn't have a simin, and as soon as the owners would realize that they lost it, they would surely be miyayish. But right now they have not yet been miyayish. Therefore, Abaye Amar loy have a yush, the lo yada the nafal minei, because the person has not yet realized that he dropped it. And Rav Amar have a yush, the lechiyada the nafal minei, because as soon as he finds out that he dropped it, miyayish will be miyayish. Meimar Amar, he will say, Simna Leslie Begavei. I don't have a simon. So there's no way I could retrieve it. Therefore, my hashtu de miyayish, we already consider it as if he was miyayish now, as Rashi says, my hashtu aviyush, sharei nofal, because it fell already now. Ucheshoyedeya, shuvein daitalo. When he notices that he lost it, he's not thinking about it. So there's actually a big shaila in the Achronim what the machlokes is. Because the Rishonim ask, why isn't this a regular case of Breira? In other words, we don't know if later on the person is going to be miyayish or not. So why do we say it's Huvra Dover Lamafreya, that he was miyayish or that he wasn't miyayish? So there are those who learn that Rava holds, since he is also to be miyayish, we consider that already now that it's mutter. In other words, the Torah is matter one to take something that for sure the Baalim is going to be miyayish the moment it's lost. Abaye holds no such thing. If there's actual yish, that's when it's mutter. Before there's actual yish, it's not mutter. So it's mamish machlokes what the Torah is matter. Was the Torah matter something that the Baalim were miyayish on, or was the Torah matter something that surely the Baalim will be miyayish on? That's one shot in how they understand Abaye. But there are those. I'm sorry.
What's he supposed to do? It doesn't have a simon, so he's not chayav lahakra. So then what's he supposed to do? Just leave it there?
No, he has to take it. He has to take it, and he has to hold on to it until Eliyahu Navi comes. He has to watch it until Eliyahu Navi comes.
But at some point it is yish, and at some point it should be his.
No, because once it's be suras liyadi, if it comes to your hands before there was an actual yish, now you're saddled forever with the chiyuv to return it.
Just leave it. Why is it take it?
Because the Torah says you have to take it. The Torah says you have to take it. And that's also a very, very big shaila. There's a mitzvah hashev teshivim. Are you mechuyev the mitzvah? Well, let's say you were over on the salamta, right? Are you still mechuyev in the hashev teshivim, or maybe you're only mechuyev in the hashev teshivim once you take it? So depending on what that situation is, you might want to keep it or not. But that's also a very big shaila in the Rishonim. So Zok to Gemara. So there's one sheet who holds that Abaye holds no, you need to have actual yish. But there are others who holds no. Abaye also holds you don't need actual yish. But you need at least that. You need at least that we know for sure he's going to be miyayish. And here we don't know. So the Kotzker Rebbe says yish shalom midas. Nishdukan yish. A yid should never give up. A yid always have hope. So who's miyayish shalom midas? He doesn't think he's not thinking clearly. If you think clearly, you'll realize there's never a reason to be miyayish. Which does she say? Oh, Rupshitz Shalashki? He was never miyayish. Oh, that's the. He was never miyayish, and he had a son. Tashma, Peiris Mifuzar. So one of the cases in our Mishnah that says you're allowed to take it are Peiris Mifuzar. For Gemara, Allah Yada the Nafal Mine. If this Peiris Mifuzar means it fell out of his bag, it fell out of his wagon while he's driving, he doesn't even realize yet that it fell out. So is this not a classic case of Yishay Midas? And what does our Mishnah say? That it's mutter to take. So you have a raya like Rav against Abaye. Did we not learn a moment ago that it's speaking about somebody who willfully abandoned it? That clearly is not Yush Shaloi Midas. Zok Gemara weiter. This is where it is. This is where I was looking for the nusach. The Aveda Midas. It's called an Aveda Midas. So like Naflu Mimenu, Umidas and Nichem Efker. So there's a shaila by an Aveda Midas. What is the halacha? is the halacha that you're allowed to keep it or not. Tashma. So here, this Aved that you surely were allowed to keep. Tashma. Mois mifuzaris. Mois mifuzaris. Hare elu shaloi. That he gets to keep as well. Again, the same question. Am I halayadin anafamanei? So Gemara Hasam Nami, money a person always realizes very, very quickly if he lost it. Rabbi Yitzchak said a rule that a person is always feeling his wallet to make sure that it's still there. Hachanami, so too over here we could say, and by the time you found money that someone else dropped, he surely realized already that he dropped that money. Tashma, Igula Dvela, Yikik Shal Nachtam, Hariel Shaloi. Again, the same question. Am I Valiyada the novel minute? Maybe this fellow didn't realize yet that he lost it. Agav the Yakiri, these items are relatively heavy, and when your load suddenly gets lightened up, you notice something's missing. Agav the Yakiri made the other move. Tashma.
Why did they stop and turn around? Pick it up?
I guess they didn't notice immediately, a couple of seconds later. Tashma Ulashrain Shal Agaman, Hariel Shaloi. Vamai, Halayada the novel minute. Again, Hasan Nami, Agav the Chashivi, the Shrein Shalgami are relatively expensive. Once again, he's like a Yitzchak. Tashma. Hamoitz Mois, Levatach Nasios, Ubabatim and Drashers. You find money in the shul. Ubachalmakam Sharab Matsuyim Sham. Hare El Shaloi, they're his. Why? Mipnei Shabai Lemisiyai Shemahen. So there's a big shiloh over here. Why isn't the Besmedrish koined b'kinyan chotzer? If someone abandons his clothing in shul, he leaves a coat there, should the shul be allowed to keep it and then sell it? Because they should be koined before anybody is koined. There's a whole shiloh of a shul will be koined b'kinyan chotzer.
Who's the shul?
The kahila, the hektish. Once again, how does he know? He doesn't know that he dropped it. Here's where Rabbi Yitzchak said as halacha, Adam asal mashus b'kisai b'cholsha. Tashma. Leket is reserved for the aniyim. At what point do we say that aniyim aren't coming anymore and now anybody can come and take it? When the nemushos have finished going through this field. The Gemara wants to know what's the definition of the mushos. The old aniyim that would walk with a stecken, they would walk very, very slow, and they have time to very closely analyze the field, and if there's anything there at all in Leket, they would take it. Once they pass by, nobody's going to bother coming anymore, because clearly they would have picked up whatever was there. There were always people who, after everybody went through it, they would make the final run through it to try to salvage anything left over that the others didn't take. Once those people go through it, we look at it like it's swept clean. Why can you take it? The Aniyim here know that already the Lakute were there. The Aniyim locally know that the older people already went through it. But Aniyim in other cities who are also entitled to this leket, they don't know about it. So this is a vital case of Yush Midas, and you see that the Yush works. Since there are Aniyim here, Hanach, the Aniyim of every other city, Meikara Iushe Miyayish. They've already been Miyayish from all that leket in the next field, the next city, without even going there, without even thinking of whether or not it's depleted or not, because the army they'll say, Aniyim Dahasa Malaktale. Surely the Aniyim of that city got to it first, I'm not even going to bother. So the only Aniyim that don't have a pre-Yush are the Aniyim of the local Aniyim, and they already see that it's being picked through. Tashma. So there's another shiloh over here. Why is it that how it says call Adam Why call Adam? Why wouldn't you say that the owner of the field is now koinit b'chaser? Why doesn't it automatically go back to the owner of the field? He should be able to be koinit. So there's a discussion about that as well. Tashma, ketziyos b'derech. You found ketziyos are figs or dates. You found figs on the ground that clearly fell off a tree over here. So you could tell that it came from this field, came from this tree hanging over the border. Or if you have a date tree that's leaning over out of the private property into the public property. There's no problem of gezel. Clearly, the owners will be miyayish. And since they're considered hefker, you're not chayiv to take ma'aser from them. But but if they were olives or buxer, also those were not. You would not be able to take them. The ratio you might have a kasha to buy because it says they're mutter. How do the owners know that the dates fell off the trees? As long as the fruit's on the tree, they're not going to be miyayish. They're only miyayish once they fall off the tree. But the owners don't know every single fruit that falls off the tree. Oh, so it's not true according to Abai like kasha. Agav de chashivi. Since these are expensive fruit, memashmish food. The owners do know. The owners do know that stuff's falling off. Teina nami made the idea the noshra. And when it comes to a fig as well, the owner knows that it's falling off. That's not considered yir shalom midas. Elaseif el Rava kasha. According to Rava, by Zayzin and Charubim, why is it usher? Clearly, once they fall down, the Bailam are going to be miyayish. So why isn't this a case of yir shalom midas? Dr. Gemara. So the Gemara is explaining the kasha. The Ketani b'Zayzin b'Chum usher. Why is it usher? According to Rava, yir shalom midas have yush. Dr. Gemara Amaravo shiny zayis. A olive is special. An olive, if you look at an olive and you're a farmer, you'll be able to say this olive grew by Yankel's tree. You could actually recognize where a fruit came from. As Rashi says, you can tell where it grew. The owner, even after he finds out that it fell. So this is not a case of Yush Lemidas. This is a case where there's actually no yield. The Meimer Amar, the owner of the olive tree, will say, Kula al Muyadi dididininu. Everybody's going to know when they find these olives that the olives belong to me. V'lo yevgerhein, v'lo shaklilu. No one's going to take them.
Farmers would know. Not
What?
regular people would.
Whoever was going to be walking by there, the assumption is that they'll be able to tell.
Find it.
No, the public knows. The public will be able to tell.
We'll be able to tell.
That's what Rashi says.
Why do you need the public to know? You need the
Because
owner
it-
to
it
know
is
that it's not
years.
mine.
No, because anybody walking by won't take it because they'll know it belongs to me.
Oh, they won't be enough.
Isn't that what Rashi says? Marise Nicholas from you, Hilchach More, the owner, the Meimar Amar, the owner says, Kula Alma, everybody passing by, Yadi knows the Didi Ninu. Everyone passing by knows that these olives are mine. Yeah, everybody who are farmers knows this. You know, nowadays you meet somebody and you guys say, what do you do for a living? In those days, that's a non-starter. Everybody did the same thing for a living. That was one small talk you couldn't make. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter.
What do you plan?
Very good. Zok to Gemara, the Ketani b'Zes Mechamaser, Amaravayu shiny eyes hold the Chazum Mechichalo. The Alvagav the Nosrin Zaysi, even though they do fall off, made the idea duchte the inishu. Everybody knows in this, I guess, in this area who this belongs to. Correct the Gemara, if that's the case, so why is it any different by dates and figs? It should also be noticeable, distinguishable which tree it fell from. Amar Papa is a very big difference. Taina in the Filas and the Messes. The Taina doesn't have the 3-second rule. As soon as it falls, it gets disgusting. So I'm not miyayish because people don't know what it is. I'm miyayish because it's miyas right away. As Rashi Hilchach, even the idea, the Nasra, may kara miyayish, mishom miisusa. The mechinava lechashiva umafkalu. Tashma, Haganev shenot al mizeh v'nosan lazeh. Peter Pan, he steals from one person and he gives it to another person. V'chein Gazlan shenot al mizeh v'nosan lazeh. Or a Gazlan who stole from one person and gave it to another person. V'chein Yarden. Oh, Rabbanut? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's why David is laughing. I don't know I see him laughing. Why are you laughing with Peter Pan? Because it's Rabban. You see, I don't know my nursery rhymes good enough. V'chein Yarden shenot al mizeh v'nosan lazeh. Or the Rupshitz Creek that took product from one person and delivered it to another person. Meaning the person who finds it can keep it. Why? Because you assume there's yush. Gazlan the Yarden, the person knows that a guy stole it from him, so he's miyayish. The person saw his item got swept up, so he's miyayish. Elakana mika chazalei de miyayish. I don't even know that it was taken from me. A guy that takes it clandestinely. So maybe the guy received it before I had a chance to find out about it. So this is a case of Yush Lemidas, so you should have a right to Rava that Yush Lemidas have a Yush. We assume that by Geneva, people don't know. That's the whole definition of Geneva. It's taken when they don't notice.
We say money, he checks all the time, right?
So Zok Gemara, but we're not having money. Yeah, if it was money, it would be an issue. If we're talking about something else, you don't leave money. I mean, by the river, we're not looking at money. You're talking about some type of product. Zok Gemara, Tir Gemara Papa, the list of Mizuyim. You know what type of Ganav we're talking about here? We're talking about the list of Mizuyim Ganav. And therefore, he knew about it. In fact, the more Yahaki Hainu Gazlan, isn't the list of Mizuyim Gazlan? It's in your face. So more Trey Gavni Gazlan. There's two types of Gazlan. There's one who's tough and takes it away, and there's one who's tough because he has a gun and he takes it away. Okay, we'll stop here, Be'ez Hashem, and we mamshich tomorrow.
You know the story of my grandfather and the king, right?
But they're starting Shachos 10 to 7.
Yeah.
Because okay, Robin Hood steals from one guy to another guy. Okay. See, liberal governments aren't Robin Hood. They're Stam Gadol. They steal from the rich and they don't give to the poor. So what was the last of your grandfather?